Hello, dear friends, and welcome to the warmth of my study. Very happy to be coming to you with these words of Torah through the kind auspices of my dear friends of the Spite and Dival congregation, the SDC, Beis Shalom, and these words are brought to you in the anticipation of Shabbat Hagadol in this year, 5780, 2020, which I like to think of as the Pesach which we pray to God will never be repeated, but which we are enjoined to make certain will be a Pesach never to be forgotten. The test of how we welcome this Chag will be in the difference that we find between Pesach as we celebrated it last year and all of the years before then, and the Pesach Haba Aleinu Latova that we will celebrate next year and all the years, may they be many, which will follow it. What will we learn? What will we carry forward with us? How will we be more appreciative recipients, not only of the Almighty's gifts of family and friends and community, but the pairing of those gifts with the gifts of the guidance which we receive from His Holy Torah and from the traditions of our people. It is especially sweet and a great honor to be offering these words to commemorate the yahrzeit of a great lady, Rochelea Bas Reb Chaim Tzvi, whose yahrzeit is just recently passed. She was the mother of our dear Buddy Skydel, Yibod L'Chaim Tovim Baruchim, and the shiur is presented in her memory by Buddy and Cyril, and also with the hope that it will be a merit for all of those who are now sick. May Hashem send them speedily a return to health, return them to the bosom of their families. For those who are our brothers and sisters of the Jewish community, may they be returned to Sidorim quickly in our day. To those who are our brothers and sisters in other faith communities, may the Almighty allow them to welcome coming holy days and festive days together with their families in a human family at peace. If someone were to ask me what I would like to nominate as the anthem, the caption, if you will, for this particular Pesach, I believe I would select the response that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to the king of Egypt when he went to announce to him that the plague of locusts was coming. When the king was under the terrible pressure of his advisors that Egypt was nearly finished, and they weren't really in a position to withstand another plague. And so Pharaoh superficially agrees, L'chu yivdu es Hashem Elokeichem, go worship your God. But with an important follow-up question. Now tell me, mi v'mi ha'holchim? Who actually is going to go for this first celebration? And Moshe answers, without hesitation and with steady resolve, Vayomer Moshe bina oreinu uvizikeinenu nelech. We are going with our young and with our old. For you see, Pharaoh was offering a version of the Jewish people to Moshe Rabbeinu that would include leadership by those who are most vigorous, most capable of undertaking the arduous journey into the desert, the lifting of the animal sacrifices, the construction of the altars. Get the job done by those who can do it. Get the world built by those who have the muscle and the sinew to perform its critical tasks. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, you clearly don't understand what kind of a people the Almighty intends this to be. We won't leave anyone out. And we intend to go, true, with our powerful, inspired youth, uvis kenenu. But we will go together with all of our elders. The oldest Jew in Egypt must be there. And I believe that this message, this rejection of the pharaonic vision of the Jewish people, is one which reflects an attitude toward the elders in our midst, not as a kind of tolerated, dependent class, but as a treasure, as something which must always be included. Indeed, as we begin to tug on this thread, uvizakenenu, we perhaps can see that this concept was again challenged when Israel was first attacked by the people of Amalek. Well, for those of you who daven with us in our eastern campus across the street from here in Judge Friedlander's basement, I mentioned this theme on Parsha Zachor, but just to review it and to make it available to those of you who weren't there with us. The Amalek attack was focused on Kol HaNechashalim Acharecha, the people who had made it out of Egypt, but really had trouble keeping up, had trouble maintaining the pace that the Jewish people were proceeding on as they journeyed toward Har Sinai, toward Mount Sinai and the Great Revelation. The Amalekites perhaps believed that they would meet with very little resistance. After all, the whole world was terrified of the power of the Jewish people and their God after what they had seen in Egypt. What was their strategy, their theoretical construct? Well, they believed that the Jewish people would be grateful to have the herd culled, would wink, wink their resistance to having the people who were such a drain on resources, the people who slowed them down, the people who had to be carried, the wheelchairs that had to be pushed, the walkers. Oh, the walkers, couldn't they push those things more quickly? They keep getting stuck in the sand. I thought the Jewish people would be relieved to have the stumblers dispatched. And the Almighty and the Jewish people, in one voice, responded, we did not come this far to become that people. We are here with a mandate that doesn't look at how fast people walk, how powerfully they march in the course of a day to determine their value to the Jewish people. We will never relinquish those slower walkers, because they are part of us, and they are part of the embrace of the God who freed us. And so in an unusual mixture of phrases, the focus on Amalek, the temptation toward a eugenic Jewish people, well, that is our war and God's war forever. It's not a war against a particular ethnic tribe. As Reb Chaim Brisker, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, the Rav's grandfather, said, the war against Amalek is the war against an idea. It's the war against an obscene suggestion. Because we are a people for whom Zikanim are not a problem. Indeed, our mythology traces the origin of Zikna, of old age, to its first appearance in the Torah, and tells us that it came as the response to a prayer of the patriarch Abraham, who said to God, if fathers and sons look alike, how will people know the one who is truly deserving of respect for a lifetime of righteousness and the pooling of years of wisdom? And the Rebbeinu Shalom replies, your request is a worthy one. And when the pasuk says, "Ve'Avraham zakein ba bayamim," and Abraham became old after having lived many, many, many days, that was the invention of this change in our physical forms that signals our arrival at senior status. One of the most charming and famous passages in the Haggadah is one which has a gloss in the Gemara in Brachos in the 4th parak. You all remember that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah begins his famous discussion, Harei ani kiven shivim shana, I am like a person of 70. And the Gemara explains this unusual term of phrase, I am like a person of 70, by allowing us to overhear a discussion that took place between Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and his wife when he was offered to be the head of the Sanhedrin at the deposing of Rabban Gamliel. So his wife said to him, Amra lei les lecha chivrosa, but you don't have any gray hair, any white hair. Who's going to ever take you seriously? Hahu yoma bar tamnisrei shnei hava. He was only 18. Israchesh le nisa v'ahadru le tamnisrei dori chivrosa. And he grew 18 strands of gray hair in his beard, or white hair in his beard, and that's why he says, Harei ani kiven shivim shana v'lo ben shivim shana. He said, now I appear like a man of 70, instead of saying, now I'm 70. Here's an instance where the accoutrements of aging Israchesh le milsa are a miraculous gift. So, to all of you guys out there, the young ones I mean, who dread the appearance of that first gray hair, those first gray strands in a beard, if you have one. Just remember that once upon a time there was an 18-year-old who proclaimed his gratitude to the Almighty for allowing him to look like he was 70. When my children saw my beard beginning to turn gray many, many years ago, the first hints, they were so disturbed. And I would comfort them and say, Kinderlich, don't worry. Each of those white hairs was purchased retail. I earned each and every one, and I'm not ashamed. I'm really okay with it. The Midrash tells us again and again in different ways that the redemption from Egypt is something that came about through the Zikanim, through the elders of our people. So I can swing my grandfather's shelf here. I'm pretty sure that I can find the Midrash for you. Thank you for being patient with me. For the Midrash says, Lama zachu hazikenim sheyigalu Yisrael al yedehem. Why is it that the elders of Israel were chosen as the agents of the redemption? What does that mean? It means when Moshe needed to inaugurate the whole process of the slaughtering of the first Korban Pesach, the first offering, whose blood, as you remember, marked the lintels and the doorposts, which distinguished the Jewish homes and which protected them from the scourge of the last plague. It came about by Yikra Moshe L'chol Ziknei Yisrael. Moshe called the elders and gave them the instruction to tell the people about taking the lambs. And the Midrash says the reason they were given this incredible opportunity to be instrumental in the mechanism of the Exodus was that they were the ones who recognized Moshe. Ilulo kiblu hazakenim estivarv shel Moshe. Had the elders not recognized the authenticity of Moshe Rabbeinu and his mission, Av kol Yisrael lo haya mekablim. The Jewish people would never have accepted him. Ela hazakenim kiblu tchila umoshchu kol Yisrael achareim. It's a beautiful, poignant phrase. It was the elders who accepted him first, and they drew the whole Jewish people after them. V'asu osom laha'amin lishmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only did they bring the people to recognize Moses, they brought the people to faith in God himself. Because the people looked to the Zikanim as the bellwethers, as the litmus tests to distinguish between that which was authentic and that which was inauthentic, that which represented a cause worth devoting one's heart and soul to, and the kind of superficial offerings which clutter our lives and are not worth the time, much more any devotion. And so, when we look to the trigger of the whole redemption, Chazal direct our eyes to the elders. How were these elders selected? It seems that they did not just come about because they were old. They came about because they were the products of a certain kind of experience. And here we refer to another passage in the Midrash. You know that in the difficult period of the wilderness, when this fractious people tried the patience of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Hashem said to him, you know what, you need help. And he said, Esfali shivim ish miziknei Yisrael. I need 70 old guys. So Amar Moshe lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribbon Shalom, En Yodea mi ro'ui umi eno ro'ui. I don't know what, I should just go out and look for old people? Are they interchangeable? You tell me just choose 70. What am I looking for? And the Almighty gives him a remarkable answer. He says to him, Oson hazakenim v'hashotrim, shahayu mosrim atzmom lilkos aleim b'mitzrayim, b'maskones halevenim, the elders who presented themselves and in the spirit of self-sacrifice offered to take the beatings for the people when they were dunned for impossible daily quotas of bricks. Lefishamosru atzmam lilkos al hatzibur, because once they offered themselves to serve at great personal sacrifice and often with pain. V'nosu itcha b'maso ha'am. Now they will share with you the burdens of leadership. L'lamedcha shehishvan HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe, to tell you that these people who had led in the darkest times, people who had a history of service, were counted by the Almighty on being the equals, if you will, the comrades, the colleagues of Moshe Rabbeinu. I think this brings us to a very interesting conundrum, which perhaps I will use as a segue to the reason that this entire theme, to me, today, is so critical and needs to be trumpeted. What this last midrash tells us is that leaders need history. Leaders need a past. Unfortunately, in the contemporary setting, having a past is really a handicap. Anyone who has been in public life for a period of time, anyone who comes with a past, a history of public service, that past can easily, almost across the board, be harvested for its least flattering moments. And often those least flattering moments are taken and removed from their original context, removed from the circumstances which surrounded them, and thrust up like a beached whale on the glaring sands of the contemporary moment. It's so easy to nullify a lifetime of service by extruding one moment and putting that all by itself before the cameras to be judged by anyone who has an opinion. And so America is again and again drawn to people who come to its spotlight. We call it clean, but it simply means they have no past. It means that they don't drag behind them 1,000 times 1,000 moments when the cameras flashed and the recorders recorded. No one's heard of them before, so they're great. That tendency is one which clearly prejudices us against older leadership. We like the kind that rolls off the assembly line with no history. Now it's true, America, after a painful process of winnowing, is moving toward an election which features septuagenarians. Even with that, the damage which has been done to all of those people by dredging their history for its most unflattering outtakes is going to be a feature of the upcoming election, willy-nilly. And we should be asking ourselves, who in the world would enter public office? Who would serve when a past is a black mark? My dear friends, if I may shift to this unique moment in time, a moment which I will perhaps address in some of its other dimensions in another presentation. Perhaps its most important theme is that it has revealed in our culture a dark prejudice, a dark disrespect for older people. Of course, this comes out most flagrantly and flamboyantly in remarks by people like the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, last week, when he said, and I think I'm quoting him correctly, grandparents should be willing to die to save the economy for their grandchildren. Send older people out to work so that the country can stay rich because, and these are my words, not his, perhaps they're expendable. A new kind of army, a new kind of cannon fodder, one which is sent into hopeless confrontation with a biological nemesis, because who really cares if America loses a few 100,000 of its older people? This was amplified by the conservative commentator Glenn Beck. He says, all of us over 50 should go in and keep this economy going and working. Even if we all get sick, says the man who works in a private studio at home. I'd rather die than kill the country, because it's not the economy that's dying, it's the country. And the solution? since most of the people who are going to fall victim to mortality in the coronavirus are older people, perhaps it's best just to write them off. Fuel the economy with their carcasses. Because why do we need them? They're no longer producing in many cases. All they're going to do is live a long time and collect Social Security and keep everyone else from having as much fun as they need. It would be very easy to pin this in this extreme right-wing position. But I think that would be a mistake. I think this is bigger and more pervasive than people are focusing on. We have a population which has been abandoned to its isolation. What am I talking about? I'm talking about older people who were born a little late to get into the whole computer and internet thing. Isolation means a very different thing if you're home without the internet, without the knowledge or perhaps even the physical dexterity to see your friends and loved ones on FaceTime and on Skype. When every person who walks into your home brings a new risk and a new danger, so physical visitors have to be kept at a minimum. Many of those people can't enjoy the wonderful electronic offerings of the New York Public Library. They can't binge on Netflix or conduct email correspondences. Isn't it odd then that this population doesn't seem to be anyone's priority in terms of helping them take part in what is now a networked country? You know that when Mayor de Blasio finally got around to closing the public schools of New York, there was a commitment. This is the school chancellor, Richard Carranza, talking. The city is hoping to get every student a device by the end of the week. And they managed to, within days, come up with 25,000 laptop devices and then more, so that children could be connected to their schools. Have you heard any discussion about making simple, aged-friendly devices available to older people who are more isolated and at greater risk than those children? I'd be happy to hear about it. My email is rabbijrosenblatt@gmail.com, and I will be very happy to hear that I'm wrong. One thing I do know for sure, that the people who've crafted the policies for hospitals, the policy which says absolutely no visitors or private aides, don't seem to have recognized that that policy falls most heavily on the elderly, who find themselves in a strange surrounding, who sometimes are disoriented, who sometimes perhaps suffer from cognitive impairment, for them to be alone in a hospital, sometimes without the ability to even push the call button effectively, when doctors and nurses are stretched to the limits, and not to have anyone who is there just for them, anyone who is familiar, anyone who is charged with their advocacy, has dire implications. I don't know what the exact answer for this would be from an epidemiological standpoint, but the failure of anyone to prioritize the question, to me, howls about a society that just doesn't value older people the same way they value the young and the vigorous. From perhaps the Republican point of view, maybe it's because they're not economically contributing as much. But I would more suggest that it's part of a larger orientation of our culture, one which goes from right to left, which finds aging distasteful, which doesn't count 18 white strands in a beard to be a miraculous gift, but which will lift and cream and stairmaster as long as it can to avoid the signs of aging, and when confronted with it in others, will view it as something between a defeat and a sin. How did you let yourself get old? Is it any wonder that so many aging people choose to be in environments where everyone around them is a contemporary, so that they don't have to bear the scorn, the distaste of a culture that sees them as horrible reminders of what happens if you don't resist aging. I think we have to really look at this now, because with the coronavirus, identifying risk groups, we have rolled the log on a disturbing reality of postmodern life, which may be in the end more important to the future of our society than the virus itself. Because as our tradition understands it, we have run the risk of declaring that which the Torah has taught us to treasure and to treating it like refuse, like kol hanechasholim acharecha, a society of eugenics, where old lives are not as valuable as young lives. I think I would like to close with one more passage in the Midrash, a beautiful story, which perhaps illuminates one dimension of the irreplaceably valuable role of the aged in our world. We are told, Adrianus Shchikatsomos, Hadrian, may his bones rot, which is the opposite of saying Zichron Livracha. Hadrian of the rotten bones. Have ovar beilin shevile de Tveria. V'chamochad soba koim chatzed chatzuvim the minsav nitzivim. And he saw an old man, and he was clearing ground, cultivating ground in order to plant fig trees. Amalei sabo sabo bar kamo shninat. Old man, how old are you? Amalei, he said to him, bar ma'ashanin. I'm 100 years old. Amalei ba'ad bar ma'ashanin koim chotzed chatzuvim the minsav nitzivim savradat ochil minon. And you're spending your time cultivating ground to plant fig trees. Do you really think you're ever going to have the chance to taste the harvest? Amalei. And he said to him, well, yes, sochisi achalis. If I'm lucky, if God spares me, then I will eat. V'im lav. But if not, kishem sheyogu li avosoi, kachani yogea levanoi. And if I'm not lucky enough to be here for the harvest, then as my ancestors toiled for me, I am happy to toil on behalf of my children. See, one of the special gifts of those who are older is the recognition that we will leave this world, and that in the meantime we live in it with a true concern for the world that we will leave behind. Our memories go back far, and we remember those who were here before us, long before us. But we are also capable of dreaming of those who will be here long after we are gone, and of living in such a way that they will harvest the fruit. In a world in which so many have earned what I consider to be the most obscene of all epithets, and I've said it before, to be termed consumers. People who want to know always and ever what's in it for them, who want to devour whatever it is that they have created, to absorb it as personal pleasure. Desperately our world needs those who have come to the recognition that their time and their capacity to consume are both bounded. But that doesn't mean that they stop living. It doesn't mean they stop planting, because they have the perspective that it is noble to plant for those who will come later, to leave a planet that is alive and intact long after we leave its crust, to preserve things so that others who come after us will have the joy of them. You see this shelf beside me? This was the bookcase in my grandfather's study. And some of the Sfarim that are in it now were his Sfarim. I remember when we began to study Talmud together, and we would hit a word very infrequently, because my grandfather was a remarkable Talmud Chacham and a linguist. We would hit a word that even he didn't recognize. He would say, "Jonathan, we have to consult Jastro." And this is the volume that he would go to. And when I hold it in my hands, I still feel his hands on it, because nothing delighted him more than knowing that when he was in the world of truth, his Sfarim would still be in the land of the living. And I look forward to the day, if God is kind to me, that among my descendants there will be hands waiting to receive these same books. Because the privilege of being old is the privilege not only of living in the past, it is the privilege of dreaming of the future. And with one last thing I will close. The rabbis carefully selected the message for this coming Shabbos. And it is the end of the books of the prophets, the last verses, the last chapter of the prophet Malachi. And the Navi says, "Hinei anochi sholeach lochem es Eliyahu hanavi." I send you Elijah the prophet, lifnei bo yom Hashem hagadol v'hanora, before the coming of the great and awesome day of God. And this, by the way, according to many, is why we call it Shabbos Hagadol. And why am I sending Elijah? Here, the Malbim tells us that the sending of Elijah is to repair something which, if left unrepaired, will represent the destruction of the world. And what will Elijah do? V'heshiv leiv avos al bonim, v'leiv bonim al avosam. He will return the hearts of fathers to the children, and of the children unto their fathers. Pen ovo v'hi kesi es ha'aretz cherem, lest I destroy the world. V'nureinu v'zakenenu, unless we can bring about a world in which the young look to the old, and the old look to the future of the young. V'kesi es ha'aretz cherem, and the world will be utterly without hope and utterly without a future. If in this unique time, really a unique moment in modern human experience, we can clarify for ourselves this value, the value and the role of the elders among us, then we will be able to say with the psalmist, Zeh hayom asa Hashem. This is the day which God has made. And on the day itself, it is easy sometimes to see nothing but the darkness. But Nagila v'nismachalo. In the future, if we have learned the lessons, if we have availed ourselves of the opportunities offered by the insights of this time, then truly Nagila v'nismachalo, we will mark this day as a day when God gave us great benefit, great miracle, great joy. To all of you and to each of you, my dears, I wish you a Chag Kosher v'Sameach wherever you are, whether you are experiencing the magic of the Seder and all of the Sedarim of your life alone, or whether you are sitting at a long table missing the large number of guests that you would normally welcome. May this Pesach, never to be repeated, be also worthy never to forget. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to embracing you in person and to sharing that perspective. Chag Sameach.